Mesechus Yevamos Daf Kuf Aleph ends the 11th parak of the Masechta, concluding the halachas of a situation where a child does not know who his father is, specifically talking about where they're both Kohanim. He's definitely a Kohen, but he doesn't know which man is his father and therefore which family he belongs to. Then we begin the next parak, which discusses the halachos of Chalitza, beginning with the Mishnah, discussing a number of different halachos, and the Gemara gets into what dayanim, what judges are required for the Chalitza procedure. So let's begin. The Gemara said he had a situation where a child is a child of a Kohen for sure, but he doesn't know which man is his father, which Kohen is his father. So the Gemara discusses this situation where he cursed or hit them, and that is an Isser. That is something which he's chayav misa for. So the Gemara says, what happens if he did both of them? If he cursed both of them? We said obviously he's pater for each one. If he cursed just one of them, what happens if he cursed both of them? So there are two cases the Gemara discusses. If he cursed or hit each of them separately, or if he cursed or hit each of them together. So we have three different versions of the halacha. We bring a brayso that says the opinion of the Tanakama is that he's chayav for both cases. Whether he hit or cursed both of them together or separately is chayav for either one. Then you have the first opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who argues and says he's only chayav the case where he hit or cursed both of them at the same time. But if he did each one separately, he's pater. And the last opinion, which is even if he did it at the same time, he's pater. Now, what is the understanding of each of these two opinions? So the first opinion, the Chacham Hal is chayav for both. If they're together, it makes sense. He's certainly hitting or cursing his father, is one of the two. If they're separately, he also hit or cursed his father. There's no issue. The only potential problem is that he needs to be warned, and the warning didn't mention which one is his father, because the warning doesn't know which one is his father. So it's what's called hasras safek. It's a warning which you couldn't clearly tell the person that you're going to violate an issur by doing this action. So the Tanakh holds, because you could tell him if you curse these two, you'll violate the issur for sure, that counts. Now the first opinion of Rabbi Yehuda says that doesn't count. That's called hasras safek. And therefore, he's not chayiv if he does each one separately, because the warning he gets for each of them doesn't count. Now, the last opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara questions, how could we possibly be pater if he hits both of them together? This one action is definitely an issur. You have asras vada here. The Gemara says because it's gzeres hakasov, that you're not chayiv for cursing or hitting until you know exactly who it is. And that's because there's a linkage between cursing a father and cursing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Just like cursing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no potential sharing this. There's no cursing two at the same time. There's only one HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So two, the cursing of the father has to be that there's only one clear father. And you learn from cursing to hitting because they're put together with a hekesh. Okay, next the Gemara says that the child can go serve with the avoda of both fathers and their families, but he does not get a chelek from either of them. So the Gemara says if he doesn't get a chelek, why is he going to serve? The Gemara says, what kind of kasha is that? He wants to do the mitzvah. The Gemara says, okay, no, my kasha was, it says, the language is ola, that they could force him to go serve with them. Why could they force him? Why would he be forced to? Let's say he doesn't want to. He's not going to get a chelek. Why should he be forced? The Gemara says he's forced because people will see that he's not going to one of the families, may not know that that's because he's doing the avodah with the other family, and they'll think he's not going because there's something wrong with him, but his kohanic status is in doubt, and therefore he's a puzzle. In order to avoid the rumors of psul kahuna, you make him do the avodah for both families. Now, next we said that he cannot take from either of the mishmaros, because he doesn't know which one is his, and they could each tell him, you're not from our mishmar, you don't get from our chelek. But if both potential fathers, are for the same mishmar, then he could get. So the Gemara asks, but each Beis Av could say that he's not from our Beis Av. The Gemara answers, or Papa says, we're talking about where they're from the same Beis Av. That concludes the parak. Now we get to the next, which is a discussion of the mitzvah of chalitza. Chalitza is how a woman is freed from the zikas yibum, from the obligation, the connection of yibum. The procedure is the recital of a number of psukim by the woman, by the man, by the yavam and the yavama, and by the dayanim that are there. Then she takes off his shoe and spits in his direction. So the Mishnah will give us a number of the halachos here. So it starts off by saying you need three judges there. Three dayanim have to be there, but they don't have to be professional experts. They just be three people. Three regular individuals count as the dayan. Now, you have to do it by taking off the shoe. What counts as a shoe? So the Gemara is going to discuss a man'ol and a sandal. Those are two different types of shoes which are often discussed in the prakim that follow. Manal is a soft leather shoe, which wrapped to the foot. Sandal is a harder shoe that was laced. It had laces at the edges and it was laced up. The manal was run around with straps. So the Mishnah says as follows: manal is kosher. If you use the manal, it's kosher. The implication is that it's b'di'evet. The Gemara will say it's even l'chadchila. And pilya is a sock. That's a soft sock. Could be even like a leather sock. That's puzzle. A sock does not count. The Gemara will analyze that. A sandal. So there it depends. If it has a heel to it, it's kosher. If it doesn't have a heel, it is puzzle. Now he has to have a foot. The foot has to be there at least up to the knee, and the shoe is above that part of the foot. If he has that foot and you do a chalitza from that, that's kosher. If his leg is cut off at the knee or higher, and therefore it's not being worn on the foot, it's higher than the knee, that's puzzle. That doesn't count as a good chalitza. Now, what if there's some other problem with the shoe? What if the shoe was not his, or if it was a shoe made out of wood, or was the left shoe on the right foot, or the right shoe on the left foot? Those are chalitza kshera. Not supposed to be l'chadchila, but it's chalitza kshera. What if the shoe didn't fit him? So if it was too big, as long as he could still walk with it on, that's kosher. If it was too small, as long as it covers the majority of the foot, that's kosher as well. Now the Gemara begins. The Gemara says, why do we say, what type of dayanim do we need exactly? It says you need 3 hedyotos, so why do you call them dayanim at all? The Gemara says because they have to at least be able to speak and to read the text properly like dayanim are able to. The Gemara quotes a brisa that says the mitzvah chalitza is 3 that know how to read like dayanim. Now we'll get into how many we need. So this brisa says you need to have 3 dayanim. Rabbi Yehuda says you need to have 5 dayanim. Now we're going to have a lengthy discussion of what the source for each of them is and how they learn the psukim. So the Gemara says the Tanakama who says you need to have 3 dayanim because in describing it, it says that they should go to the zikanim. Zikanim is plural, so you need to have 2. You cannot have an even number of people on a business. Everyone always has to be odd, so you add 1 more, and therefore you have to have 3. Now Rabbi Yehuda says, it says ziknei ones, and then it says zikanim. It says you should go to ziknei ha'ir, v'karu lo ziknei iro v'dibru elav, and it then has to be v'niksha yivimto elav le'ening has zikanim. So you got ziknei and zikanim. Each of those is 2 for a total of 4. Can't be an even number, so you have to add 1 more. So it's 5. Now, what does Tanakama do with the fact that it says ziknei? So the Gemara says that's something else. That's to tell you that they could be hedyotos, so it could just be regular 3 old men. It doesn't have to be specifically dayanim. According to Rabbi Yehuda, how do you know that you could use hedyotos? So he says that's because it says le'enei. You have to do it to the eyes of the dayanim. How does that show anything? Because we said that le'enei teaches me that they have to be able to see it and they can't be blind. If they can't be blind, obviously they're not Sanhedrin because the dayanim of a Sanhedrin can't have a mum. We have a brisa quoted by Rav Yosef who says that they have to be clean of sin and also have to be clean of a mum. Therefore, if we required a real dayan like from Sanhedrin, he would not be able to have a mum, couldn't be blind for that reason. You wouldn't need la'enei to tell me that they can't be blind. And the fact that la'enei excludes blind shows that we do not require kosher Sanhedrin here. Now, the source, the pasuk that teaches me that you can't have a mum is from Shashirim, where it says kulach yafa rayasi umum ein vach. Now, according to the Chachamim, what do they do with the word la'enei? La'enei, what's that for? So the Gemara says that is to teach me the halacha of Rava. And Rava says that they have to be able to see. They have to see the roik when she spits. They have to see the spittle flying from her mouth. And it says that she has to spit. La'enei has a kanim. Now, how does Rabbi Yehuda know that halacha? So yes, he needs it like Rava. So then how then does he know that you can't use hedyotos, that you could use hedyotos? Gemara says, you're right, we have to give a different source for that. That's because it says Yisrael. It says be Yisrael in the psukim. That means any Yisrael is acceptable over here. Now, what are the Chacham going to do with Yisrael? So that's to teach the halacha of Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, who says it has to be a bezdin of Yisrael. It cannot be Gerim. The Gemara will discuss later at length why is there a psul of Gerim for a bezdin of Chalitza. Now, says the other opinion, how do they know that it has to be Yisraelim and not Gerim? So that's because it says Yisrael twice. According to Rabbi Yehuda, what are you going to do with Yisrael twice? Why isn't, what's the second one for? So the Gemara says that Rabbi Yehuda says that it's like a halacha we learned in the Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda says we were sitting in front of Rabbi Tarfon, and Yevamos came to do chalitza, and he said to us, all of you answer and say Beis Chalutz Hanal. When he say, the Psukim described that everybody has to call him Beis Chalutz Hanal, everybody around, all the Yadam involved all have to say that as well. Now, according to the other opinion, how do you know that? So that's because it says v'nikra, plural. It says that we should and they should call them. So the Gemara says, okay, hold on a second. He uses the word v'nikra and he uses the word v'karu. So if you're telling me that you make a drasha based on those, so each of those is 2. Now, the Gemara asks from when it discusses the Dayanim, it says v'karu and v'dibru, discussing what the judges need to do. There's 2 more plurals there, so you should add 4 more individuals then. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you should have not 5 but 9, and according to Chacham, you should have not 3 but 7. Someone says, no, that v'karu and v'dibru are used for something else. V'karu is that they have to say it and they cannot send a shliach, and v'dibru is that they tell him good advice. If he was young and she was old, they say, what do you need to do this yibum for? Better let somebody older do it, vice versa. They also say you should stick with someone your own age and don't get involved in a situation of machlokes. Okay, now the Gemara goes on to who is the halacha like. So the Gemara quotes Rava, name of Rav Nachman. The halacha is that chalitza requires 3 dayanim, since our Mishnah, which is a stam Mishnah, doesn't give a name, says that it requires 3. So the halacha is like a stam Mishnah. So the Gemara says if that's true, then miyun, which is a procedure by which a ketana who was married off by her husband, who was married off by her brothers or by her mother, a ketana should also require 3 for the miyun procedure. So the Gemara says, where do you see that there's a stam Mishnah that says that a katana requires 3 to do miyun? So the Gemara quotes a Mishnah that says miyun and chalitza both require 3. So, okay, so the Gemara says, well, maybe so. Maybe it's true. Miyun does require 3. The Gemara says that can't be, because this was Rava quoting Rav Nachman, and we have another statement of Rav Nachman where he paskins that miyun only requires 2. Where do you see that? So the Gemara quotes a Brisa. Miyun Beis Shammai says requires a beis din of mumchim. Beis Hillel says it does not have to be a beis din mumchim. They both agree that it requires 3. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi say it requires only 2. And then Rabbi Yosef Bar Minimi says name of Rav Nachman, and the halacha is like those 2 people, like Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi. They only require 2. So you have a contradiction. Therefore, in Rav Nachman's opinion, do you require 2 or 3 for miyun? So the Gemara says not a problem. This. As far as miyun it goes, there's only one stam in Mishnah. You quoted a stam in Mishnah that said miyun and chalitza, but that quoted chalitza, and our Mishnah is also about chalitza. So you have 2 stam Mishnahs that say chalitza requires 3, and therefore that's the halacha. But as far as miyun, you only had 1 stam Mishnah, and therefore the halacha is not like the stam Mishnah that says that miyun requires 3. Someone says, but there's another set of stam Mishnayos about this. Also, you have a Mishnah that says miyun achalza b'fanav, then you're allowed to marry her off, because it is a beis din. So you see, it clearly requires a beis din of 3 for miyun and for chalitza. So again, you have another stam Mishnah for miyun. So one says, okay, but this talks about miyun and chalitza also. So now you have 3 stam Mishnahs talking about chalitza requiring 3, and only 2 talk about miyun requiring 3. So the Gemara says this whole thing doesn't make any sense. Why are we counting stam mishnayos? What's the difference? 1 stam mishnah, 2 stam mishnahs, 3 stam mishnayos. A stam mishnah shows there's no machlokes on the topic, and that's the halacha. So if you have a stam mishnah, you paskin like. So it doesn't matter 1 stam mishnah, 2 stam mishnahs, or 3 stam mishnahs. If Rav Nachman wants to paskin stam mishnah and chalitza, and therefore the halacha is that chalitza requires 3 dayanim, the same thing applies to miyun. So the Gemara says no. The reason Rav Nachman paskin based on the stam mishnah is because it's a stam mishnah in place of a machlokes. We have a mishnah that says that as far as smichas zikenim and egla arufa, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda whether it requires 3 or 5, and that same mishnah continues and it says chalitza and miyun require only 3. And there, Rabbi Yehuda did not argue. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda was chayzer on the concept of chalitza. Doesn't argue on chalitza anymore. That's why we know that chalitza you don't have to have any machlokes about anymore, and that's how you can paskin clearly the halacha is chalitza is with 3. Alright, the Gemara continues. Rava says that the dayanim have to set up a specific place where they're going to do the chalitza, like it says also even to hashar los kain, and has to be a place. And Papa and Avuna Beit of Yeshua say they each did an incident where they had 5. They had 5 down and present. The Gemara says it seems to be going like Rav Yehuda's opinion. The Gemara says, what do you mean? We already said that he was chayzer. He doesn't hold a 5 anymore. The Gemara said, no, they only required the extra 2 because they wanted to be well known. They wanted people to know that she was free to the shuk, that she got chalitza. The Gemara says, Rav Ashi went to the home of Rav Kahana, and he said, come with us. We should have 5 people present for the chalitza. And Rav Kahana said, I was standing in front of Rav Yehuda, and he said, bring a bundle of branches you could use as a chair and sit down, so we should have 5 people present for this chalitza. He said, why do you need chalitza? And he answered, in order to be publicized, everybody should know about it. Now, Shmuel Bar Yehuda was in front of Rav Yehuda. He said, bring a bundle of branches, that he should join us and be the 5th man for a chalitza. And he also said, what's it for? He said that you should have pir sumei. Everybody should be aware of it. He said, don't we have the halacha? We learn out of the word be Yisrael that you need to have a bezdin of Yisrael in order to be present for chalitza. I am a son of Gerim. I am a ger. I'm a ger myself. He and his father both converted together. So the Gemara said that Rav Yehuda said, someone like Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda is so honest that I would trust him in order to take money away from the person who owns it. If he testified that he owes it, I would trust him. The Gemara says, you would? How's that possible? It requires 2 eidim to take money from somebody and force him to pay. So he's as trustworthy as he could be. He's not 2 eidim. How could you paskin like that based on 1 aid? The Gemara says, no, what we mean to say is that we would downgrade a document. If somebody has a shtar and he says that he owes money based on the shtar, that he's owed money based on the shtar, we would say, based on the testimony of Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, that it's collected, and if he does not owe money. It's meaning I would say that you don't collect based on the testimony of him. His testimony would be enough for you to leave the money with its rightful owner and not take it away from that rightful owner, although you otherwise would have. But to take it away from somebody, you do need to aid him. Alright, the Gemara says further, Rava says that a ger is allowed to judge mid'oraisa, like it says, so it says that you have to, the king has to be from Mekarev Achecha, that you put on you. The king on you has to be from your brothers. That shows that a ger can't be a king, and a king is the same as a judge, and therefore a ger can't be a judge either. However, it's only true for a ger judging a Yisrael. However, a ger is allowed to judge another ger. It's only a lecha that you cannot have a ger, but a ger is allowed to judge another ger. Now, if his mother was a Yisraelis, then he is allowed to judge a regular Yisrael. Now, as far as chalitza goes, though, he has to have his mother and his father both be Yisraelim if he's a Jew, but his father was a Akum, then he's not allowed to be present as one of the Yanim for chalitza, like it says, V'nikra Shmoi Bi Yisrael, Beis Chalitza. Now, Bi Yisrael implies it has to have both parents being Yisraelim.